Since COVID, well, I think the attitude towards change has definitely changed, without saying changed too many times, but there's definitely an openness and willingness to change. Whether we are actually changing at the rate we could is another debate. I don't think we are, personally, but I think that's part of the conversation for today. With technology, it's an ongoing tango between technology and the users of that technology. Technology must continuously evolve to adopt more users, otherwise it's going to become easier to use, it's going to become more accessible. At the same time, those users have got to be willing to take a risk. I think when you think of expressions like "no one ever got fired for picking IBM," yeah, those are classic sayings, but it plays to the fear. But it's a true thing, and it's a great marketing scheme by IBM. But what it is doing is playing to the fears of the social, conforming to the norms of the wider social group, and the decision maker going with what's safe, because as more people, IBM's the oldest technology business in the world. So as the perceived risk around it because of that time is lower, and so the decision maker will save their skin by picking what might not be the most suitable solution, but safe. And I think that's a cultural thing within businesses, and it's got to be collaborative. It has to be collaborative. I think when you look at the hospitality sector in comparison to other industries as well, in investment terms, I'll talk on this a bit today, but financial technology, fintech, it's got its own name, healthcare tech and retail tech. I mean, fintech had something in the realms of $120 billion of investment last year. Hospitality technology had $5.5 billion of investment last year. So it shows that we need to work that money harder, and there's no other industry has the passion like hospitality. You meet someone who works in hospitality, they're a different breed to other industries, but we've got to make that work. It's a collaborative piece. When it comes to, the technology providers, I'm speaking on behalf, I am a technology provider, so willingness to be collaborative and open our doors up and be able to have those conversations is there, like 100%, and we're doing that with our customers, but with the wider market as we continue to grow, it's an important thing, and there's got to be that willingness on the other side, because technology can be treated like a kind of subordinate subsection of an IT department, and the thought process that you throw the problem at the technology provider and it'll solve itself. And it's the silver bullet thing. Technology is not the silver bullet. The users of the technology, that's the fundamental piece. They've got to be willing, they've got to have the knowledge, and then using that technology, it makes them more impactful at their job, makes more impactful decisions. It opens up a whole world of opportunity for the businesses. I think it's the education on that within the sector, because hospitality is typically a very practical industry. It's a people business, and if you come from a chefing background, as an example, fitting technology into the natural flow of your day might feel a bit alien, but then there are ways that it will optimize what you do. It's finding the balance, yeah, and it's got to coexist. Otherwise, the ones that don't invest in technology are the ones that are going to fall behind, and that's the sad reality, because with any industry, with any technology, there are some innovators, there's some early adopters, and they'll make the move. And of course, as the majority start to identify that opportunity and the perceived risk comes down, so talking about that IBM example, as more people use these technologies and the perceived risk comes down, then suddenly the laggards will be cleaning up at the end. I'm sort of talking about the technology adoption curve, of course, but it's just that there is such opportunity, and you've got to be willing to make the change, otherwise you'll fall behind. Well, good morning everyone. Lovely to see you all. As Chris kindly introduced me, I'm Ollie Brand, I'm the CEO at Zupa, and I'm here to talk to you about pioneering change through technology for the future of hospitality. And when Chris asked me to talk today about my two favourite topics of hospitality and technology, and then how it's changing, I pounced at the opportunity. I'm going to get really philosophical, so it might get a bit weird in here, so let's go. So at Zupa, we exist to free people from mundane tasks to do what they love. And we do this through our catering management solution called CaterNet. We're obsessed with the back of house. We think hospitality businesses are always going to need to buy food, store it, make it into something spectacular, and sell it to their end customers. And we're obsessed in making that as automated and intuitive as possible. And we were born out of the IT department of a contract catering business 17 years ago. And over that time, our understanding of the industry has evolved. We've learned so much as we've gone, and we continue to learn every day. And I'm going to share some of those lessons with you today. But first, I wanted to try something different and take a really big step back to put everything into perspective with a very brief history of technology, starting with the definition of technology, which is the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes, especially in industry. And what I've done is I've picked some key technologies that have stood the test of time, that are really relevant to our industry, and plotted them across the vast expanse of time. So starting with ancient BC, going back about 1 million years to the control of fire. It's a pivotal moment for technology. It's created the possibility of evolution. All future technology innovations will come thereafter. Then 10,000 BC, agriculture, farming. The tribe could grow bigger than 150. We could live off the land and build communities. Then the wheel and the cart. Movement of goods and people became easier. Then skipping forward just a few years to the 19th century, we have the first mechanical computer. So it's an enormous calculator that paved the way for future computing. Then refrigeration, so increasing food life and food storage, shelf life. Then the gas cooker, so food preparation could come in-house. Then skipping forward a few more years, you had the car. So movement of goods and people became even more convenient and scalable. Then the personal computer, so bringing computing into the home and into the office. Then the World Wide Web, so the information highway. You could access information anywhere in the planet from at the click of a button. And then getting to the 21st century, the smartphone. So we now have a supercomputer in our pocket. And of course, the hot topic at the moment, which is artificial intelligence, which is changing how we interact with information, how we learn things, how we do things, basically. And it's really exciting. I mean, it's a crazy time in history that we're in right now. And if you look across the vast expanse of history, I know I've been very selective with the technologies we're picking, but it's very operational. It's all to do with doing things. And then in the last 50 years, we've hit this exponential curve of progress with information sharing, and we're now entering an age of interpreting information. And what I'm trying to say here, or why I'm doing this, is to put everything into perspective and highlight that we are a species of great change, but we're very resistant to change. So to give you some examples, I mean, there's a lot of time between a technology being introduced and it being widely adopted. There's a lot of friction. The car is an example. When it first came about, it was viewed as a unsustainable technology. People just thought, get a faster horse. And then the personal computer as well. There was a quote at the time from a person who was in computing. It says, there's no reason anyone would ever need a computer in their home, which seems laughable right now because I've got 2 computers on me. I've got a smartwatch and my phone. But we've always been resistant to change, and there's good reason for it. And now in this world where there is abundant information, there's good reason to be. So with new technologies and all the information that's out there, we risk making unsustainable change. And like any great technology, we want the changes we make to stand the test of time. So new technologies, like the fantastic robotics that James just shared with us, artificial intelligence, you're speaking to a robot, you're not sure if it's a human, metaverse, headsets, it's all pretty utopian, and most of our reference points are in sci-fi movies. And it can look a little bit like this, where the technology comes about, it's like, wow, this could be cool. And then I don't understand any of it, but it's going to change the world, make us rich, bye, bye, bye. And then, why isn't anyone using it anymore? And then, well, we've already invested so much in it, we might as well keep using it, and so on. And this might feel like a familiar story to some, whether it's personal technology, home technology, business technology, where you could be adopting it. And in this world of abundant information, the pendulum really does swing between overexcitement and denial, and we eventually land somewhere in the middle after all the hype. But the bottom line is that technology must serve a practical purpose. Like the definition of technology, it must serve a practical purpose. So I just wanted to introduce, this is a nice chart. We all have a bell curve. And this one's a fantastic one. It's called the technology adoption curve. And what it represents is the ongoing tango between technology and its users. And to give you a simple example, so the iPhone, we're on the iPhone 15 now, yeah? So back in 2006, when the iPhone 1 came about, the innovators were the people who were queuing up outside of the Apple Store to get their hands on that new technology. They're willing to take the risk, try the new technology, pay the premium to have it. Then as it's gone through, we've gone through all the versions, 2, 3, 4, and as more people, it gets easier to adopt, it disconnected from iTunes, so now you could just set it up as you get it out of the box and so on. It becomes easier. And as we move through the curve and the volume of people are adopting that new technology, the perceived risk with the technology starts to come down. And eventually we come to the laggards at the end who are the most risk-averse people. They will only adopt the technology if they have to, if it's to remain competitive, or their existing method of doing the thing that they need to do with that technology is no longer supported. So in summary, what it's saying is the earlier we are to adopt a new technology, the earlier in the curve, the more willing you are to take a risk and pay the premium for it, and vice versa the other way around. And the other thing is to move along the curve from the technology provider's perspective. I can send you those slides, by the way, Gary, if you want. The technology provider must improve. So the technology provider must improve. It must get better. The perceived benefits must get easier. It must get easier to use. And of course, the complexity must come down as well to move along the curve and accumulate more users. Otherwise, if you don't evolve as a technology provider, then unfortunately you'll fall off you won't continue to grow and eventually fall away. And I thought it'd be interesting to compare, so that's the technology adoption curve, compare it between sectors. So I thought there's a perception that the hospitality sector is far behind the technology adoption curve. It's, we're more risk-averse sector. And I thought I'd compare it to other industries that are perceived to be more technically progressive. So like fintech, it's got its own name, financial technology, fintech, healthcare tech, retail tech. These are sectors that are perceived to have more advanced technology. And I thought what would be a great way to understand or see what the difference is. So what I found, unsurprisingly, is technically progressive industries have far more investment in technology. So with some numbers, back in 2022, so last year, so in billions, fintech had $132.5 billion of investment versus hospitality technology, which have $5.5 billion. So what that's telling us is we've got to work that $5.5 billion very hard. And if you could put in a word with SoftBank, that'd be great. But, those are just numbers. When asking the question of why don't investors invest more in hospitality technology, it's because the industry is perceived to be fragmented, is more regional, so it's harder for technology to hit scale and spread. It's cyclical, so it's more vulnerable to market environments, like the pandemic, as we all know. And the other thing is generally more risk averse. There's high consumer expectations, tight margins, and so the investors, tread carefully. But the thing is, there's more passion in the hospitality industry than any other sector. And when putting that into our experience as a provider in the industry, what we saw is, we aren't as technically progressive as other sectors, but we can be, and we will be. But it's the nature of the industry. It's a very hands-on sector. It's a people business. You're serving people day in, day out. And as a chef, fitting technology into that natural flow might feel a little bit alien. It's a very reactive sector. So the day-to-day operations can get in the way of having the space to actually truly think about what proactive steps we can take to become more efficient. And what we found actually in our roundtables we hosted with EP earlier in the year, and we've done other research, is that the bigger businesses have got more opportunity, are more investment in technology. They have teams doing the data analytics and so on, versus the independent or smaller businesses, which are kind of further behind and finding it more difficult to move along the curve, which is ironic because typically the smaller businesses are more innovative and more disruptive and normally then get swallowed by the bigger businesses. So it's an interesting finding. The other thing we found is perceptions towards technology in real terms is that the technology products in the market, it's a struggle around affordability. You know, they seem expensive, and the upfront investment, I think it's the education of the return on investment of investing in that technology. The capabilities might not quite match up. You know, Mark's just spoken about integrations and how that all joins up. The usability as well, you know, making it as easy to use. If you're a chef, it's got to be so straightforward. It's got to flow naturally in your day. And then what we saw is COVID definitely accelerated the attitude towards change. It changed the way we did business overnight. Suddenly we're all on Zoom calls, Teams calls, having to interact with customers when we can't physically interact with customers. It just changed the playing field. And there was definitely an agility to making a change. And also it gave that time, for some people it gave that time to reflect and then plan and make kind of more meaningful changes. But the question I want to ask today and fuel the ongoing conversation is, are we actually making meaningful change? You know, from the technology provider's perspective, what's the perception in the market? Is it there? I mean, there's fantastic demonstrations today, but are we kind of moving the dial to move along that curve, much like the iPhones? And from within the businesses as well, is the attitude for change there? And I wanted to share some research on that, which around the attitude to change and our natural resistance to change. And this is some research I thought would be worth sharing. It's going back to our timeline chart and going back a million years to the control of fire. At that stage in our human evolution, there are some default settings in our brain. You know, our daily priority was to survive, it was to stay in the tribe, to find food. Obviously, this day and age, that's out of the question. I'm talking to a room of hospitality and caterers. There's so many options in terms of food. But at that time, there were some default settings that were hardwired, and we've maintained them today, much like the fight or flight mechanism. And those settings are the social default setting. This is all to do with making change within a group situation. So the social default setting is the idea of conforming to the norms of the wider social group, the fear of failure, the fear of making a change and then being ostracized by your tribe, being, you know, just getting that embarrassment, or in this case, your colleagues. And that's where you hear expressions like, no one ever got fired for picking IBM. You know, IBM's the oldest technology business in the world. When you think about the technology adoption curve, the perceived risk in being an old technology company, it's a great marketing scheme from IBM in the 80s, but the difference of, basically what it's saying is the decision maker is going to save their skin by picking the least risky option, but it might not be the most suitable to make a meaningful change in the business. The next one is the inertia default setting. So we generally resist change. We tend to prefer ideas, environments, processes that are more familiar. So this is where you hear expressions like, because that's the way we've always done it. It's a horrible, horrible expression. I've got a great story about this actually, where our CTO, Stephen, a number of years ago, he worked in a business and he went to a client's site and there were two people who were employed to iron invoices because the scanner wouldn't accept folded pieces of paper. Yeah, this is real. And then what he found when asking the questions as to why, he discovered that they actually changed the scanner 2 years before that to accept folded pieces of paper. So that continued. No one asked the question why, it continued, and that's because of the way we've always done it. You know, it just inertia. And then the last one is the ego default setting, which is, you know, we react to anything that threatens our sense of self-worth, our standing in a social hierarchy, in our tribes or in our businesses. And that's when politics and personalities start getting in the way of making meaningful changes. And that's when you hear things like, because I said so. You know, if you can't make a meaningful change, you've got to get the outcome over these things. So if you can recognize when these things happen and address it and focus on the outcome versus these things getting in the way, then the future is bright. And looking into our crystal ball for a second, and what does the future look like with all these exciting new technologies? Operational efficiency is going to go through the roof for technology providers as well as the wider sector for the hospitality industry. Admin and manual tasks are just going to become increasingly automated. What that means is more productivity, more prosperity, and ultimately that's going to lead to more jobs. You know, the people within the businesses have to be open-minded that their roles are going to evolve, but the businesses that see it as a cost-cutting opportunity are the ones that are going to inevitably fall behind. informed decision making. The quality of decision making is going to get better and better. Operators are going to become super operators. When you think about the example of the personal computer, and it seemed strange, the idea of having a computer in your home. Now think about the amount of information you consume every day. The same principle is going to apply to our industry. The quality of decision making is just going to get better and better, and it's just going to get more impactful, and it's going to become democratized as well. More people, the decision making is going to get spread out more across the business. And the customer experience as well. To keep moving along that technology adoption curve, the customer experience has got to get better and better, and it will get better and better. I think there are examples like the Zoe study, customer knowledge around nutrition. The Zoe study, you're going to find out about what is the perfect nutritional guidelines for you. So nutritional guidelines are going to go out the window because it's going to be completely bespoke to the individual. There's more allergies. We've got 14 allergens in our legislation, but there's avocados, as an example, is an actual live allergy. We're going to need to accommodate all of these things and make sure that it's factored in and be proactive about it. So the ability for customization, for accommodating people's preferences must be there. And just to wrap it up with a quick conclusion, change is happening fast. We're on that exponential curve, but there's so much opportunity. If you don't change, you'll fall behind. That's for the technology providers and for the businesses in the industry. And we, both industry and technology, need to accelerate change. This is that collaborative piece that Chris was just talking about earlier. We need to work together to make sure that we need to support each other to make sure that $5.5 billion is worked very hard. We don't get the level of investment as other industries. So what? The passion in this sector, we can make those changes. We can make meaningful outcomes for the wider sector. And there's just never been a better opportunity than now. So I'll just close it with that, where the businesses that will stand the test of time are those that serve the best practical purpose and are most adaptable to change. So thank you very much for listening.
Some really interesting points. Any questions for Ollie at this stage? Yeah, I've got one straight away, anyway. You're talking about actually decision making will be democratized. Yeah. Do you believe it?
Yeah, I do, absolutely. I think much like, when you say...
Well, the industry, one of the issues pre-COVID, if you like, and I'll put it into things, was that actually decision making was controlled too much. So it's quite a shift.
Yeah, I think it comes with the educational part as well, like where when we say the quality of decision making is going to get better, admin tasks are going to get automated, all these things, it's freeing up people's time. So the need for specialization is going to get more and more. I think when you think about how is it going to impact, how are there going to be more jobs, what does that mean? There are examples like a focus on the guest experience. There's going to need to be more training around that so that when someone comes in and actually is really specializing on a role and starting to drill down and the quality of information's there, it's just going to mean that the people working within the industry are going to have that education and so the tools at their disposal, but likewise the information to learn and the environment to be able to evolve that. And I think that's just a general thing, but there's a lot of moving parts to get to that place. Yeah.
It's really interesting because it's part of the point about working from home. People have actually got to trust more, which actually is quite hard as well.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. I think maybe it sort of changed the way working from home and I think there's sort of become more of a focus on things like culture, focus on, when we talk about trust, business values, all this stuff. I think the dynamic of the industry changed as well. Like before this, I know employment and having staff is a challenge, an open challenge in the sector at the moment. There's a massive shortage of staff. But the dynamic also shifted slightly. So before, where the employer was in the employee-employer dynamic, it kind of changed to, as COVID happened, there's this kind of general consciousness around, social consciousness, but what am I doing with my life? And all those kind of questions started coming out. What's my life purpose? And that kind of shift the dynamic a little bit. So as we came out the other end, and suddenly the employees it just became a more of a conversation around that consciousness, and suddenly the need to be more in touch of like, what is our purpose? What's our shared sense of purpose as a business? What are we trying to achieve? What are we delivering? And I think that's that's just been I'm sorry to getting a little bit like going off the wall a bit, but that has been just a big shift in mindset.
Well, I think that is where the heart of that bit I was talking about earlier about how workplaces got to change and create other things you tap into, the art, the culture, the music, food service. It's all got to change.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Giles?
Ollie, do you think there's anything in our industry that the robots, that the tech can't do? And if the answer is yes, do you think this is an opportunity to start empowering the people that will be doing what's left behind to do it better?
That's an amazing question. Well, I mean, this is just my thoughts on it, but one of the conversations we had, so a few weeks ago, was a brilliant AI roundtable with EP and Camouflage hosting it. And the whole thing about like AI boards and AI, AI leading businesses and all that, those things. And when we talk about the decision making, if we lean into that, we'll just become an undifferentiated glob. I think genuinely, eventually that's what will happen. And so when we talk about decision making, it doesn't matter where it is, whether it's about the guest experience, whether it's about what's going on the actual plate, every aspect of it, there's got to be that human touch. There has to be. Otherwise, it's like it just becomes undifferentiated. And I think so I can't give you specifics because I can't say like, I think there's absolutely amazing use cases for robotics and really doing the mundane tasks, the things that are just a pain in the backside, versus getting to a place where doing the thing that we really care about. It's like creating an amazing experience, building communities, doing cool stuff. And that human touch has got to be personal. It can't just become systemized.
Well, can I turn that back onto you, Giles? Because you do quite a lot of research in this area. So, to me, service has got more important.
I think it is, and I think the care is the most important thing, and of course this is sort of predicated on the assumption that the care is there in the first place, and particularly the kind of the human interaction, that end touch point. We need to make sure that sense of care, and of course care actually comes from the top, but you hope that you employ people who care and that you continue to kind of nurture that sense within your organisation. I think that I'm changing my mind slightly on tech, and I've had some very good interactions with ChatGPT, and it's actually made me feel quite good, these interactions where we've almost had it's been more conversational, and I think there's a danger that the AI and the tech will get so good that, dare I say it, these human interactions, unless you've really got the right people, might become obsolete. And so I think there's a real pressure that we need to make sure that if it's not being done well, we need to do it better, and where it is being done well, we need to keep celebrating it and empowering and trusting our employees and saying, keep doing it, because you might have seen some robots around in the corridor. Don't worry about them. You're brilliant at what you do, which is making another human being feel good. So I think that, for me, is where I'll continue to.
I mean, there's some fascinating bits, aren't there? I'm going to get this wrong, but isn't there a school appointed an AI as the head?
A school?
Yeah, there's a school whereby the head has now become I'm not going to say a robot, but a system.
Wow.
Because they reckon the decision making is more accurate.
Or is it entirely?
It's interesting. But also the other piece on that chatbot is how many kids will do homework now using that.
Yeah, that's
so they're actually going back to paper and pen.
Yeah.
Because the only way you can make sure it's the person's homework is by doing that.
There are homework checkers.
I'm sure there are.
I think there was a case where lots of students were doing dissertations on the back of that. Now, of course, universities themselves have then got the ability to check whether or not the dissertation has actually come from that person. They've got the ability to. So almost you have a problem, but then it's resolved with another solution piece.
Yeah. Well, is that using previous homework? So it's like, what is your writing style, and then feeding that into AI homework checker, and then being able to dump the new paper and go, that's wrong.
Universities are using that to prevent people from getting...
Until that becomes corrupted and then you've got...
Well, absolutely. But
the whole internet becomes bankrupt and we're back to...
But I do think but I do think, going back to your point, the human connection piece is actually going to become more important because people do want that. But I do suspect tech is going to change. I mean, there's a view that you don't need boards anymore because actually the chief execs get so much information today, you don't need the opinion of the board because you've got the information there, which is factual. So why do you need people's opinion? Or opinions come now obsolete. If you do a gut feel, no one takes it seriously anymore. So it's changing lots.
Just to add to that, the loss of a board, it does lose the network impact. Which then, if you've got an AI bot, it's like the AI bot's going, let me introduce to my friend this other AI bot. It's just not going to work. so
that'd be frightening, wouldn't it?
It's great for finding information, but I think Copilot-wise, I think you become more of an expert at what you do by using these tools, as opposed to, and obviously there is the risk that, frauds, people who are not actually focused and mastering their skill and using it as a crutch, but it won't take long to suss out when those people do that. So, I think it's just one of those things, trial and error.
Well, can we say thank you to Ollie, please?